Hello again, everybody. This is James Bartley, and you're watching and listening to the Cosmic Switchboard Show. Today, we have an old friend, Judith Kwoba, from the Nightflight podcast show, back to talk about a variety of subjects. She really needs no further introduction. I'm really excited about having her back on again. So, without any further ado, Judith Kwoba, welcome back to the Cosmic Switchboard Show.
Yeah, thanks so much, James, for having me back. And I guess we both agree. Sometimes in the morning I wake up and I think, oh, I'm still in the shit show. And there is so much going on. And I personally, I feel as if I'm in an open air madhouse. And there's very little at times that I can do about it. Yeah.
Well, when you see everyone masked up, when you see that look of fear in their eyes, a friend of mine told me the other day, she saw an elderly couple at a shopping mall, masked up, arguing, and she was right next to them, and she couldn't understand a word either were saying. They were like, rah, 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 because the stress had got to them, but they're not even able to communicate at the most fundamental level because of what's been done to them.
Yeah. I had a similar experience. I was going with a bus and a streetcar. I had to get some medicine for my cat. So I have to go to the doctor, pick it up there. And so I was sitting in this streetcar, and there was a woman, I don't know, maybe late 50s, early 60s. And she was wearing two masks, and then she had a cloth in her hand so that she didn't touch anything in the streetcar. And you couldn't see a lot of facial expression, of course, but from her eyes, total panic. Yeah, total panic of even going out. And I looked at her and I observed her a little bit, and I thought, this is a crime. This is really a crime. Frightening and scaring people shitless, because she was in a state of, fear. Horrible.
And if they just turn the TV off for even a short while, but the problem is, even if you turn the TV off, there are so many repeaters in society, endlessly repeating the mainstream narrative, that it's virtually impossible to get away from this. Like, let me give you an example. I know people, they've already had the double whammy Pfizer, right? They've already had it. But now, because of this woo-woo Delta variant, and you and I know they haven't even isolated the original. So if there's no original, there's nothing to, there's no variant to be had, right? So they've already had the Pfizer double. But because they're scared of the Delta, they're going to get the single shot Johnson & Johnson. So there's this Orwellian doublethink at work where they were told, just take the wax and then everything will go back to normal. Oh, but then all this weird, contradictory stuff starts floating in. It doesn't really, prevent it. Oh, these already previously waxed healthcare staff, they're going around infectious. They've already had the wax, but they're spreaders and they're carriers. So there's all this contradictory stuff going on. So these people that I'm thinking about, they've already had the Pfizer, but because they're scared of the Delta, and they're going to come up with the Omega and the Alpha and all these other variants as time goes on, they're going to get the Johnson & Johnson single shot because the TV people told them it works against the Delta, you see. So they're going to have 3 shots over a span of 4 or 5 months. They're dead. I mean, I'm surprised they're alive now. But after they get this one, hasta la vista, baby.
Yeah, there is a reason why it only has a emergency approval. approval. How do you say that in English? Is
authorization.
Yeah. So that means, and did you hear that short clip of a Moderna representative? A lady called. She had adverse reactions, so she talked to a Moderna representative, and during that talk, and she recorded it. And during that talk, he admitted that everybody is participating in a huge trial.
The contradictory messages. And what's interesting too is these abnormies. I'm starting to call them the moo-moos because they're not slaves, because throughout history, slaves know they're slaves. They're more like livestock in a way. So I call them the moo-moos. Amongst the moo-moos who've already decided to get, as soon as it becomes available. Over here, it's like, oh, the Pfizer. I want to stay away from the AstraZeneca because of the clots, but I'm already signed up for the Pfizer, right? They already know the stories that they've allowed to leak into the mainstream about this person. They always coach it in terms of extremely rare, somebody dying from blood clots or thrombosis or whatever, right? So the meme is already in the universal information field that people have died from this. But they tell themselves, oh no, I'm not taking that one. I'm taking the Pfizer, right? So, and then you've seen the videos also too. It's so bizarre, Judith, where people in a waiting room for a wax center, right? There's a woman there who appears to be either unconscious or dead, laying on the ground. The stupid staff there, they've never been trained in, like, I guess in, first responder in emergency, relief. He's holding her feet up. She's laying on her back. She appears to be dead. And there's all these people in the waiting room just sitting there. They're looking at their phone. They're just sitting there observing. Moo, moo. None of them get up to run. It's like, let me out of here.
Yeah, that is NPC behavior.
It is.
Yeah, the NPC will still do it even if, they are standing in line and the person in front of them drops dead right away. They still think it will be different for me.
And that has to be some malign entity influence too. This override where they, because they're permanently in their headspace, separated from their heart. When someone is working from the heart center, they can just detect all this BS, right? It's just so easy, transparent. But when someone is in their headspace and they're fed nothing but nonsense, they can tell themselves, well, that's just one person in front of me, and it's just a small percentage, and I'll be okay, right? So amongst the abnormies, the moo-moos, I've even heard them talk about how, from what they understand, more people are dying from the wax than are dying from the disease, but they're going to take the wax anyway. This is like, I don't think we've seen this in nature before, Judith, where animals in the wild just willingly just run off a cliff. It's bizarre.
Yeah. And that is this false hope everything will get back to normal. I mean, come on, guys. Klaus Schwab already told you. Yeah, he made a video where he specifically addressed this question. When will things go back to normal? And I have to say that so-called normal was bad enough. And he said the simple answer is never. We will never go. He says it in that video. So we also have in the UK one scientist, a lady that is advising the government. And she was on a news show, mainstream media. And she was advocating for never letting the masks go again. No matter if we overcome COVID or not, we should keep them on board while shopping, while in the buses, and so on and so forth. And then the interviewer said to her, is it possible that you are a member, I can't recall the number of years. It was either that she had been a member of the Communist Party for 20 or for 40 years, something like that. So, and he asked her, does that have anything to do with, and she reacted not well to that question. And in fact, she didn't even answer it. She said, I come here as an expert, as a medical expert, to explain things to you. I am not here to talk about my political convictions. And yeah, of course, no, it has nothing to do with it, that you make such a claim, keep them forever. At best, you even wear them when you're sleeping in your bed.
Well, Fauci now wants 2-year-olds to wear them all the time. So this is some weird public, eyes wide shut, kind of, veiled, before it was just the, the Muslims and the Sharia types that had to be veiled, right? Now it's everybody has to be veiled. And the stories we've heard, and I have no reason to doubt it, because we know the hand sanitizer has carcinogens. We know that the water is fluoridated. We know all that. So it's not a stretch for me when, I read these articles from what seems to be pretty valid sources, citing valid sources, that the masks themselves have graphene. The masks themselves have all these toxins, and that would make perfect sense. So you have all these people, breathing and rebreathing all this fungi and all these pathogens in and out. And it's, I never thought I would see this latest version of humanity reduced to such a bovine level as I've seen today. And because they've shunted them into the R complex, mostly fear kind of victim aggressor mentality, right? So all these fearful people wearing the mask, they become a force multiplier for the system. They're the ones that are calling the police when they see 3 people in the park without mask. They're the ones that are, harassing other people without mask, right? They become a force multiplier. So I have no sympathy for them. And, the sooner they take their whacks, as far as I'm concerned, the better.
The better.
The only drawback to that, they're going to take it anyway. So, it's not really a case of a drawback or not. It's just the way it is that they're going to be kicking out spikes left, right, and center until the day they die. But, as far as I'm concerned, the sooner they take their whacks, the better. And it just shows you how you talked about the communists earlier and the long communist track record of eating their own. It's not really their own. It's just eating the useful idiots. It's just getting rid of them, right? And these universities and colleges in America, and increasingly for a long time now, the primary schools, kindergarten to the 12th grade, but particularly in the colleges, which has been a breeding ground for this Marxist Luciferian crap for so long now. Now they're in so many schools now and colleges, they're making it mandatory to take the wax, right? So it just, in other words, and Biden himself said, we're going to make it, a priority for blacks because they've been the victim of, white privilege for so long. We're going to make them at the front of the line to get the wax. So in a very public way, they're saying we don't need these idiot social justice warriors in the schools anymore. We're going to make it mandatory, and they're stupid enough to take it, right? So they'll take it. All these blacks that really haven't thought through all this, they're going to take it. And so
I have to go. I'm sorry.
Okay. Oh, no worries.
Yeah, for the audience, excuse me, I had to open the door. because I have been awaiting 2 packages, so, and they leave after 1 minute if I do not respond.
Oh yeah, yeah. And the point that I was making was that now they're openly just getting rid of all their useful idiots. Just take your whacks, just be a obedient little leftist, right? And what's interesting also in America, I've been observing this too. I don't know if they have a European counterpart to this. For some time now, they've had this American sports news channel, 24/7, ESPN, which is a subsidiary of Walt Disney, a Luciferian scumball, conglomerate, right? Anyway, ESPN is one of their TV sports channels. And what's happening is they're starting to lose control of their token angry minorities, right? See, because a lot of these token angry minorities with all these leftist mindsets and attitudes, now they're lashing out at ESPN for being racist. What it's ESPN put them there specifically so they can create this divisive, race baiting, divide and conquer, anti-white message, right? So now a lot of the blacks that are on ESPN, they're screaming about racism. They're screaming about how their company ESPN is racist. They're screaming about how they're even making racist comments about Asian athletes, right? So it's an example of, it's yet another example of how the communist system, it eats its own. It's not really its own in a sense. It's just that they always look for these disaffected minorities in every country, someone who they think, or a group of people they think has this, they can nurture a grievance, or they can nurture a smoldering rage within them in order to destroy whatever country it is that they happen to be in. And so a lot of these people that ESPN has hired, because they have a decidedly leftist slant on everything is about race now they're seemingly rebelling, and it's funny to watch because their very creations are starting to get out of control, like a Frankenstein monster, and they've even had to fire some of their white, some of their white news presenters, sports news presenters. Now, to be sure, some of these white news presenters that they fired, they're of a certain ethnic demographic of which we will not mention, okay? But they by outward appearances, they appear to be white. So even though they've lost their jobs, I think they're well taken care of. But I thought it was fitting, and I thought it was like karmic in a way, that this very system that nurtures and engenders all this hate and rage within all these apparently disaffected minorities, it's turning around to bite them, and they're having to throw under the bus these people that by all outward appearances appear to be white, but are really part of this ethnic demographic of which we will not mention, right? So it's interesting to watch how this whole thing is playing out.
Yeah. And I mean, this entire radical race theory, this entire bullshit, if you have left more than 2 marbles rolling around in your brain, yeah, then it is really easy to decipher. For instance, this article that is out there, why mathematics is racist. 2 + 2 = 5, yeah, was the meme that was going along with it. And then it had this statement that only white people insist on correct answers. And that statement in and of itself is racist, because it suggests that only white people know the right answer, and that colored people do not give a shit about correct answers. That is nonsense, total nonsense. Plus, mathematics is not a purely white thing. The Indians have contributed to it. The Persians have. And now imagine.
The Mayans, yeah, the Mayans.
Yeah. So now imagine a couple of years down the line, you're confronted with a so-called architect that grew up in such a school system where he was taught that right answers do not matter because that is racist. Do you want that guy to build your house? Because there are certain situations when it is important to have the right answer. Yeah, you have to determine how much kgs can this floor hold or not before you fall into your neighbor's you know, the one underneath, and you break through with your ceiling, and then you're sitting in their living room. Yeah, really. And these people, they are so serious about this. Yeah, so how can you not see it, that all of this is racist? And I'm just sitting there thinking, who shit it in your brain? I mean, seriously?
Well, what we're seeing is this Wedico hive mind parasite virus that's being force-fed to the TV watchers. It's being force-fed to those, you know, immalleable, impressionable minds of young people in the colleges, right? I mean, you talk about a ripoff. So many of them are going to have, or already have, whopping student loan debt, tens of thousands of dollars, and all they got out of it is this Marxist indoctrination, no life skills, right? So, and then now, like I said, in these universities, they're making it mandatory for them to take the wax. So what we're seeing is the vast majority of these moo-moos, right? They're being stampeded off of a cliff. And those people are saying, well, wait a minute, you ought to think this thing through. No, they're saying, no, I don't want to hear it. We want to take you with us, right? And my attitude is, yeah, they can go to hell. Keep running right off the cliff. And what we're going to see in the near future, what do you feel is coming down the pike? There's a lot of talk about, oh, this September, October, and not to get into the Chicken Little thing of the sky is falling, because it's fallen a lot in the recent past. But just from what you've picked up, what you've intuited, what do you see is next on the horizon as far as this whole agenda is concerned?
Okay, in general, I think the narrative is crumbling back big time, and that is why they are lashing out at everything and demand. Make it mandatory. So meaning, if you really have a good plan, a good concept, something that is really beneficial and works, you do not have to silence others. Yeah. You can have an open debate, yeah, and so that to me shows that they are in total disarray and panic, because otherwise there is no reason to lash out at that low level. I mean, this is really insane. What will be interesting in terms of autumn, winter, I think, is let's see how all of this develops once those who had the needlecraft twice, how they react when they encounter so-called wild viruses. And I'm not going into this debate, are they viruses or are they not? Because that to me is another distraction. I'm pretty sure that virology has to do a lot of homework and has to explain a lot of things and maybe rethink things. On the other hand, I have been around people that have been very sick, and a couple of days later, I came down with the same shit. So as long as that is not properly explained, yeah, what is really going on there, And how does that work? And yes, I know somebody else who, let's say his or her immune system was a little bit stronger at that moment, didn't get it. Yes, I understand that has a lot to do with it, but I will not go down that road and fight tooth and nails about is there a virus or is there not a virus? That to me is, yeah, a little bit like flat earth. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't change anything. We can figure that one out later. Yeah, when we are really free to investigate and to do studies and research without being, yeah, bullied around by those who are funding the study, or let's say where the outcome is more or less has been explained to you what they expect, and look here, we are paying for it, so you do the study now. And that is how it works right now in many instances. And but what I wanted to say, we will see how the vaccinated ones, the double needle graft, how they will perform during the flu season. Yeah. And I can also imagine that, let's say it cannot be kept under the lid by the media because the fallout is too much. I'm pretty sure that they will try to blame it on the ones that didn't have the needle graft. And they will go that road, and we have to be prepared for that mentally, spiritually. But then again, of course, once they feel they have enough, it will also blow over at one point. You know, if they feel, yeah, okay, 80%, yeah, okay, fine. And this going from door to door, of course, that is coercion. Of course, that is intimidation. And yeah, but those who have really made up their minds, they will not do it. They will not have the needle graft.
I agree. When they're exposed to things in the autumn and the winter in the northern hemisphere, in particular here in Australia, the rollout for the needlework was late, right? So that's why I mean, we're in the winter now, and it's been a particularly cold winter where I'm at, but they're late getting all this stuff out. So that's one of the phony controversies they have of how the government mishandled the rollout of the wax, right? So that's one of the things that they just distract people with. But I agree with you about not getting caught up in all these debates about whether viruses are real or all that. For example, another recent red herring was the whole, oh, it escaped from a lab, you know, in Wuhan. And then now this Chinese defector conveniently shows up and says, yes, you know, they created in a lab in Wuhan. And oh, people will say, look at all the funding that came from University of North Carolina, you know, the connections with Wuhan. That's all a red herring. It's like all the drills leading up to 9/11. You know what I mean? It's just something to make people just spin their wheels about it. And like you said, it really doesn't amount to anything. What I can say is, at a very deep level, the germ warfare programs have been deeply involved in weaponizing viruses, okay, for lack of a better term. So at a deep black military level, they think that they're real, right? And I think that should be something to be taken into account. And you know, that much being said, if they really are just exosomes, by now the exosomes would have been weaponized in these germ warfare labs. So I'm not going to, you know, enter into all these debates about this kind of thing. But the narrative is falling apart. They've already started demonizing the unwaxed, right? And like I said, they contradict themselves all the time, because even in the mainstream news here, besides the unwaxed people who keep traveling everywhere and creating all these alleged hotspots, the individuals, and they never go into details about who these people are, of course, we just have to take them at the word. Often as not, they talk about how a healthcare worker, a nurse, a medical person who's already been vaccinated is responsible for doing all this stuff, right? Spreading. Well, wait a minute. Slow down a second. I thought you just said that they were vaccinated. So how could they be spreading all this stuff if they've already been waxed, right? So they're just constantly gaslighting, constantly just, it's just Orwellian doublethink, because they know their target population. They understand the feeble-mindedness of the mass populace. So they know they can constantly put out this contradictory, misleading, deceptive nonsense because they're constantly being mesmerized by, the graphics in the background of the weird spike things floating around, in the TV news presentations and whatnot. So yes, they're already demonizing the unwaxed, okay? And they're already openly talking about, in some countries, New Zealand for one, that they're going to hunt down the unwaxed. But there's enough of a pushback, even in the countries that have been disarmed. There's been enough of a pushback that if they decide to not go full-blown, like insane, psychopathic, they already are, but and say, okay, we've waxed 80% of them, 75, 70%. They're just going to contaminate all the rest anyway. And then they're going to try incrementally to make it difficult for the unwaxed to function in society, right? They can't work, they can't go here, they can't go there. They got a daily, weekly test, the stupid PCR test. And we know what they put in the end of those swabs, right? The graphene oxides and the hydrogel and all that stuff. I've spoken, I think I've told you this before, but I've spoken to, these abnormies and their children, because here in Australia, if a child misses school for any reason, if they break a leg, doesn't matter, right? They still got to get a test and then have it come back positive and before they can be readmitted for more Marxist programming, right? So there are children out there that have already had 7, 8, 9, 10, 12, 13 tests to the point where they're saying, I don't want any more tests. I just want to get the wax. You see? So it's what they do is they give them the illusion of choice. You just keep taking these tests over and over and over, or you get the wax. And then they gaslight them further by saying, you still got to wear the mask. You still got to lock down. You still got to social distance, right? So it's crazy making, it's narcissistic gaslighting abuse on a planetary scale is what it is.
Yeah. And when we look to South Africa, what's going on there right now? Yes, of course, what they say is the initial trigger was that Jacob Zuma has been jailed because he refused to come to an inquiry because of his corruption. So then he was jailed, and yeah, that might have triggered something, although I don't understand it. If people stand up for stupid politicians, yeah, because the politicians don't give a shit about you, no matter who they are. Don't fool yourself. So, but at the same time, the politicians on TV are yapping about the face diaper and social distancing, and they are looting right now entire malls. Yeah, they are looting neighborhoods. 72 have died already in the last couple of hours. So, and of course, if you constantly block all the ways for people to make a living, yeah, you tell them, no, you can't make a living now because it is so dangerous. If you do that, you will kill people if you make a living. Yep, at one point people go hungry and people go nuts, of course, but hardly anybody puts the puzzle pieces together. Yeah. And it's not only because of Jacob Zuma. There has been it has been boiling for such a long time, and all that, you know, now allegedly the third wave is raging through South Africa. Yeah, what is really raging is unemployment, hunger, and total desperation. And of course, sooner or later, that will erupt somewhere, somehow.
Well, the infrastructure there is completely broken down and has broken down for some time. You know, basic services, simple things like sanitation, waste, which is typical of many. South Africa, it's safe to say, is now a third world country, but we see the same thing in Latin America, where just filth and trash are just everywhere in the public. And it's imbued in the culture by this point. To be sure, there are a lot of people, and particularly those that, you know, are, you know, more well off and have more means and more opportunity. They choose not to live in conditions of filth and squalor. But I've told this story before. I met these immigrants from South America. No, they were from somewhere, El Salvador. They're from El Salvador. They were my next door neighbors for a short while in San Diego, in an apartment complex I lived in. The apartment complex, the layout of the place was like a rectangular courtyard, first and second floor, and then on the second floor there's, you know, a fence all the way around, and you can look down at the courtyard, and you look down and there's cigarette butts everywhere, right? People just flicking the cigarette butts. Well, I was standing in front of my door one time, and then next thing you know, somebody's emptying out their ashtray from inside the apartment next door, right onto their, you know, doorstep. They couldn't even walk out and empty the ashtray onto the courtyard below, like where all the other cigarette butts were. They were just throwing it onto a common walkway. And it was these guys from El Salvador, because they're just so conditioned and used to living in conditions of filth and squalor. Yeah. And when you bring in that kind of demographic and you flood America like what they're doing now, with all these people where sanitation, hygiene, all that stuff, it's going to be a breeding ground for more illness, for more disease. And getting back to South Africa, the whites in South Africa are in an existential struggle for survival. The whole system has been turned against them, and in true communist Marxist fashion. Well, the proof is in the pudding. All the allegations in the past of you know, Mandela being a communist, et cetera, et cetera. Well, look at the result. Look at the result now. There's just a complete hellhole over there. And one has to ask, are the conditions of the blacks better now? Ostensibly, when the black majority is in control, but they're not really in control, of course, compared to what it was even in the apartheid days, right? Because at least back then you had basic services, you had infrastructure, you had sanitation, you had electricity, right? But the end result, the goal, this Marxist dystopic utopia, is to have like this Hunger Games kind of tent city kind of environment, which is what they're trying to bring about everywhere. Just reduce the standard of living everywhere to such a low level, and they just turn the streets into a jungle of mayhem and violence and crime, and that's how their system of control works. So I really hope that the South Africans can overcome all this, because the possibility exists that before too long, if this trend continues, and because of the international lockdown, they really can't go anywhere, right? And understandably, they're banding together, or they're forming militias over there, to defend themselves. They have to, otherwise they're going to be raped and murdered and mutilated, and their farm is burned down, like that's been going on all along.
Yeah.
So,
and that just shows sometimes your so-called liberators will turn into your worst enemies. I have seen, that I spend a lot of time in Africa in general, and we have seen it in Zimbabwe as well. Yeah. So, yeah, okay. They chased away the evil white man. And then what happened? Yeah. The so-called government then put their warlords, on those farms. And what happened? Nothing. They were just residing there. Nobody had a job anymore. There were no crops. Nobody tended the fields. Nobody gave jack shit about anything. They just had a house because they fought for the right side. And then, I don't know what they thought, that the fields will produce crops all by themselves, that they do not have to work. End of story. Hyperinflation, hunger all over the place. Yeah. What a wonderful concept. Yeah. And there was talk about doing the same in Namibia, kicking all the white people out. But Namibia, I think, didn't do it at the end because they saw what happened in Zimbabwe. And I'm not saying here that all the blacks are too stupid. I'm not saying that. But those who really know how to do it, and how to tend to a field and how to grow crops, picking the food and getting it to the market and what have you, those are not the ones that will get the farms. Yeah, just a stupid warlord will get it. And they usually don't do anything with it other than putting their fat asses in the house that they have confiscated from somebody else and are having a good time. And then that is it.
The exact same mindset is being indoctrinated into, particularly the blacks in America too. We talked about earlier how, they decided that math is a universal constant. It's neither racist or here or there. It just is, right? So they decide that, math is racist. So, like you said, we won't have any more calculus, no more algebra, no more trigonometry, because it's further victimizing blacks, right? So in the future, we won't have any, if this trend continues, and if there's anyone around in the future
who can think,
they're not going to build proper bridges. They're not going to build proper wells. They're not going to build proper automobiles. They're not going to have electricians to do anything except burn your house down, because, they've lowered it to the lowest possible denominator. And what they've done is also, they've done this to all races, because by saying that you can't do this to whites, that means they won't teach Asians, they won't teach whites, they won't teach Latins. And so by fostering this freeloading, parasite, dependent victim mentality of wanting something for nothing, which is what we see in South Africa. You got you got your country back, right? Now what are you going to do with it, right? And it's the only thing left on the platter after all that is removed is just violence and might makes right and taking from others. And who are they going to take from? The actual producers, the people who actually work for a living, the people who actually have developed an income. because the latter are the enemies of this communist Luciferian state. They want to just wipe them all out. So they're using all these disaffected victim, aggressor people, Antifa, BLM, etc., as force multipliers. And they've turned them loose. It's a siege mentality that they foisted upon the people at large, on top of all these restrictions, on top of all these medical mandates and what have you. So, you know, what's happening, I'm glad you brought it up, what's happening in South Africa now, it should be a warning to everyone, because you look at it previously, you know, a country that was on the verge of being very prosperous, Rhodesia, and you look what the communists did, you look what the West did, you know, with all the sanctions imposed upon Rhodesia, preventing them from defending themselves, allowing it to be turned into this communist hellhole, which it has become. And that is the model. That is the model that they're bringing to all these leftist cities in America, Portland, Seattle. It's the Zimbabwe, South Africa model that they've brought to these so-called blue states and blue cities in America.
Yeah. And it also, you know, all those public heroes, so-called heroes, that are constantly being presented to us, be it Mandela, be it Gandhi, be it John Lennon, or, you know, whatever, Julian Assange, Edward Snowden. And I'm not saying, you know, what happened to these people is okay and it should happen to them. No, that is not what I'm saying. But you can bet your head on it. If they drag it through mainstream media and it is hyped up, then there's something wrong. It's usually a limited hangout. Do your research on Mandela, what was really going on there. He's not a hero, yeah? He's a Knights of Malta, for instance, yeah? So there we have the same secret society influence. Gandhi was a racist, you know, as he was the role model of a racist. Oh no, how can you say that? He's a hero, he liberated the people. No. Gandhi thought, you know, what we all have seen, if you have watched the Gandhi movie, this popular scene where he is thrown out from a, I guess, second class train, where he was sitting in second class, but because he was of color, he had to sit in third class, and so on and so forth. Gandhi was of the opinion that all of that is good and fine for the real black ones, but not for the Indians. He was a misogynist, yeah? He really treated his wife horribly. So, and I know how that hurts. It stings people, yeah, if they admired for, let's say, decades and decades a certain figure. But I'm telling you, most of our so-called heroes are not heroes at all. And we should give up putting anyone on a pedestal.
Well, we've seen in the recent past, Putin, for example, he's all for all the vaccinations. He's all for all of that. You know, going back to September 11th, 2001, gee, it's going to be the 20-year anniversary before too long. What a difference 20 years makes, huh? But he went right along with that. He's supposed to be an independent leader of a nation state, but he goes right along with this big lie about Osama bin Laden hiding in a cave and all that, right? Which set the stage for all this, because the Patriot Act, National Defense Authorization Act, etc., has been turned inward. It was intended all along to be turned inward against the people it was designed supposedly to protect. So, and now all the other cons, the big lies that Putin is going along with, and I can see to a degree that he would, under the aegis, under the overall control of the global control system, that he would want to carve out his own niche and maybe even expand his own empire, so to speak, within that construct, right? but it's still within that construct. So if they ever create a shooting war, people say, oh, it'll be all theater. I don't think so. I think people will really get wiped out. But you look at World War One, right? Kaiser Wilhelm, you know, the czars, Queen Victoria, they were all first cousins. They were cousins. And they sent millions of their own people to be slaughtered. Same thing in World War II. You know, the Bank of International Settlements in Switzerland and Basel. Germans, Italians, French, British, Americans are having picnics in Switzerland when their countrymen were slaughtering each other all over the world, right? So when people say, oh no, that's all theater, they'll never go to war. They've been going to war. That's what they do. It's not going to affect them. No, it's not going to affect them. It's going to affect all the minions. And I think that's part of the agenda too. Well, it remains to be seen if it plays out that way. But these controllers would have no qualms. They've got their foot in the door. And now they want to totally destroy America because of their hatred for America, their hatred for the ideals of the Constitution and the Founding Fathers. They just want to just utterly destroy it. And they will start with the military, you know, how they're pushing the wax on all the military and whatnot. And they're stupid enough, a lot of them, to take it, right? So, and that'll just leave the door wide open. So yeah. We'll just see how that plays out there also.
Yeah, we also have to, you know, you named the Bank of International Settlements, all these institutions. We have to rethink that again. IMF, what a horrible institution. What a horrible, horrible institution. I have seen it firsthand in Africa. Yeah, so allegedly IMF is giving out loans to developing countries. Yeah. And then you have to write as a government a letter of intent, meaning you have to state what you are willing to sacrifice. And that is usually healthcare, education, and let's say you cut retirement payments and so on and so forth. Yeah, what did they do? In most African countries, yeah, you can have a loan, but you have to install a school fee. Meaning, the poorer people are now all struggling getting their children to school. Yes, we can argue about that, if it even makes sense to send them to school. But you know, the idea of homeschooling is not very prevalent in Africa. And I think it's not bad, at least to learn how to read and write and understand numbers, and that you are capable of doing the basic things at least. So yeah, that is the IMF for you. They did the same in Greece. Yeah. When the 2008, when the financial crash hit the stage, yeah, where those loans that Greece got, they went straight to the banks, yeah, and yeah, but the pensioners, they got a cut, unemployment money was cut. Healthcare system was cut big time. And these are all the same people. A lot of them are still in some type of office. There, they were willing to cut it down to, you know, the very basic needs, especially the healthcare system. And these are now the people that are so worried about you that you can get sick. And I'm saying it again, politicians do not give a shit about you. They will tell you whatever they need to do to fulfill their obligations that they have to certain institutions like BIS or IMF or giant corporations. Those are the ones that are ruling. Your politician is somebody who shows his or her face, gets whacked for it or not, and then in come the next round of clowns, and it's still going on because you cannot vote your way out of this. It's not possible. Once you have reached that level of, let's say, president, prime minister, whatever, on your way up, you will be corrupted. Otherwise, you will not get there. And there are no white hats in government. Forget about that. And when I see this hype around Trump now that, yeah, in 2024, my goodness, people, really, again, with that nonsense, Trump is going to change the world. What did he change? Honestly, nothing. If he really wanted to put an end to fake news, yeah, why did he never address this law? I'm not quite sure. Was it in 2012 when it was put into effect that allows government and media to use propaganda? Yeah. So there is a law that says, yeah, the government is allowed and media is allowed to do that using propaganda. He never addressed that law. He never repealed it. He's just somebody who's throwing around the $10 words. Yeah. Remember, for instance, when on stage, when he told Hillary Clinton, yeah, if I were president, you would be in jail. No, you know, that's a show. That's a show for the simpletons that they can buy into, put their hope once again on an outside force. Yeah. And be disappointed again.
Trump was friends with Epstein going back over 20 years, right? Yeah. And it's looking increasingly, from my perspective, that the whole January 6th Capitol, Antifa riot, et cetera, we know that the Capitol Police, the Antifa, and the Democrats, and the deep state so-called, set that whole thing up, blamed it on the Patriots, right? But who was the one that encouraged all the Patriots to go to the Capitol in the first place? It was Trump, right? Trump could easily have said, oh, in your local towns, in your local town plazas, in your local, city centers, have a big meeting, bring all your American flags and tell them that they're all a bunch of liars and they're not going to get away with it. No, he encourages them to come to the Capitol, turning all that into a fake federal offense. So, and people can't see through that, right? He was set up as the lesser of two evils, basically.
Yeah, first they make the populace stupid and take care of it, that a lot of them are in total disarray, and then they finish you off.
Yes.
That is how it goes.
That's how it goes. And so there are no white hats. There are no saviors in the military. The military is totally co-opted. They will follow orders, just like the law enforcement will follow orders, just like the feds will follow orders, because they've weeded out anyone in positions of influence that has any conscience or any empathy, any human sensibility at this point. So anyhow, we reached the end of a fascinating discussion with Judith Kwoba. Judith, can you give our listeners and viewers information how they can find you on YouTube?
Yeah, my channel is Nightflight, and it's written in one word: creative freedom. And I have a Patreon site where we do monthly get-togethers. I remember last month we actually have had 2 meetings, and the first one lasted for 5 hours.
Wow.
Yeah, there's always a lot of, look, those people, and I include me, yeah, those people that are on that Patreon team, we don't have a lot of people around us where we can talk openly, freely, yeah, without being laughed at, ridiculed, and shut up, new subject, and so on. And so it really helps, to speak freely and to blow off some steam once in a while.
For morale purposes, absolutely, it's important occasionally, especially now, to not just talk on Zoom or Skype, but to have that physical, presence with one another.
That is a little bit complicated with the physical, because I have one Canadian, and they come from Canada, from the US, from Germany. So that is a little bit complicated. I totally agree, but I think I will not travel for a long time.
Me neither. Not.
And I'm okay with that, because I have traveled all my life. So it's not that I feel I'm really missing out. But no, I'm not going along with the nonsense. And that is why I say I probably will not travel for a long, long time.
Yeah.
Unless it's, private jets.
Well, it's just a quick comment before we take a break and then go into the, the member section. Is on the airline flights. And as far as I know, Australia is still one of the only countries that does not allow overseas international travel, right? Mm-hmm. But, domestically, they have to mask up and check in and do all this other crap. Oh, but this billionaire, Richard Branson, he can get into a spaceship and he can go up, beyond the atmosphere, and that's all cool. It's all groovy, but it's another gaslighting example of we can do whatever we want. I don't have to social distance in my spaceship, right? All of you peons that fly my airlines, you have to wear a mask, right? Try eating those
Richard
peanuts.
Branson.
Yeah.
We can pick up on that on the other side.
Oh, yeah. Anyhow, we've reached the end of a fascinating discussion with Judith Kwoba. This is James Bartley. If you like what we do, if you believe in what we do, please go to thecosmicswitchboard.com, sign up and become a member, and we'll see you at the top of the next segment.